not necessarily worried about the alien thing. I'm more interested.
Sure.
I'm like, what is this? What the fuck is going on? You know, what? How much of this is nonsense? It's not 0%. So okay, how much of it is real?
So you do think that people are coming down, or other?
I think it's highly likely that the universe is way stranger than we think it is. Way stranger. And I don't even know if it's as conventional as a thing gets in a ship and flies here from another place.
Sure.
I think it might be interdimensional traveling. It might be something that's always been here. There's that thought, because there's so many instances of things like what we think of that are in like the Bhagavad Gita and these ancient texts that are thousands and thousands of years old, and they're talking about things that fly in the sky, flying chariots, flying things that have gods in them. Like, what is that? What's that all about? Like,
comets? Shooting stars?
Could be. For sure, some of them probably, right? Some of these things that people see streaking across the sky, they see something extraordinary, it lights up the sky, and then mythology gets attached to that, right? And then people, 10 years from now, tell that story. And then other people tell the story that's told to them by the people that were there. And then that gets a little twisted up like a game of telephone. There's some of that too. But then there's also uniformity. There's uniformity to the descriptions of the movements of the ships and what these things do and why they're interested in us and what they say. It gets very weird. It gets very weird to the point it's like, okay, if this is a mass illusion, if this is a creation of the mind, like Carl Jung thought it was a creation of the mind. He thought it was some sort of an illusion that people conjure up in their mind, but it's just like a common illusion. It's just like it's there in the human psyche.
Yeah.
But then there's also like physical evidence of these things. The physical evidence is when things get real weird, because then like if you're telling the truth, then this isn't totally an illusion. Or maybe it's all those things. Maybe it's total bullshit, lies, people with myths that make up myths about comets and natural disasters and all kinds of other stuff, and also interdimensional beings occasionally, and then also things that have always been here occasionally, and then also things from another planet occasionally.
Yeah.
I mean, all things are it's not binary, right? It's not either UFOs are bullshit or they're real 100%. It's like it might be all those things, everything combined.
That's what I think a lot of people struggle with, is it can be yes and yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be yes and no.
Yeah, there could be a lot of things going on simultaneously, and we can't be we're concentrating on one. Some of them I 100% am convinced are government drones that work on some incredibly sophisticated propulsion system that probably doesn't have a person in it, but they probably can move at fantastic speeds using some new novel propulsion system that they don't want to release to the public. And they probably don't know how to weaponize it yet. So they're probably flying these things around at insane rates of speed. They just can't put guns on them yet. They can't figure out how to shoot people with them, but so they're just with them. And then I think that's the reason why they keep getting sighted over these military spaces. I think they try them out on the troops. Just like they try out vaccines in the troops, just like they try out burn pits. They didn't test burn pits to make sure that people weren't going to get sick if they're just breathing in toxic fumes from all the garbage from thousands of troops. And they just did it. And I think they probably do the same thing with everything. They just tried out. So look at what it says here. Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting occurred on June 24th, 1947, when private pilot Kenneth Arnold claimed that he saw a string of 9 shiny, unidentified flying objects flying past Mount Rainier at speeds that Arnold estimated at a minimum of 1,200 miles an hour.
Dang. Dude.
So he saw these things flying at a rate, in 47, they were propeller planes, and there's no way anything we had can move like that. And he's watching these things go at an insane rate of speed. And so he said they skipped across the sky like flying saucers on a lake. And so it became flying saucers.
Flying saucers.
Yeah. And so, but with people back then that saw those things, there's no way that was the Soviets. There's no way that was the Germans. There was no. Right. That's not ours. So whatever that is, if that was real, if the guy really did see those things. And then there was a string of them that were over the White House. In 1950 something.
Really?
Yeah, there was there was photographed ones that were over the White House. There's actually like a news story about it, that these things flew over the White House.
Okay.
And I think they moved at a bizarre rate of speed too. So those ones give me pause.
Yeah.
Because, look, the universe that's obviously a drawing. That's a drawing. But I think there is a photograph of it.
Yeah.
I think is that the
Dude,
photograph?
that's wild.
There might not be. Okay. Saucers over Washington, D.C. So what does the story say?
That looks like a comic book.
Senior air route traffic controller for the Civil Aeronautics Administration was in charge of the National Airport, Washington, D.C. ART Control Center on the night of July 19th, 1952. Briefly, he states in a newspaper article, our job is to constantly monitor the skies around the nation's capital with electronic eye of radar. Shortly after midnight of that day, 7 pips appeared suddenly on the control center scope. Ed Nugent, Jim Copeland, and Jim Ritchie, all experienced radar controllers, checked the observations. The airport control tower radar operator verified the same sightings. They were over the restricted areas of Washington, including the White House and the Capitol.
Dude.
So those kind of things.
Yeah.
You got to go, well, what is that?
Right.
Look, the universe is big beyond our wildest imagination.
Yeah.
There's no way we could even fathom how big it is.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So they moved
man.
at such sudden bursts of intense speed that radar could not track them simultaneously. Those objects seemed to head for the White House, the Capitol building, and the White House in triangular formations. The sighting made the front page headlines in all newspapers.
Dang.
Yeah. So
That's
those
wild.
kind of
Yeah.
things,
I mean-
you go, okay, well, what is that?
Right.
The universe it's impossible for us to even get our heads around how big it is.
Yeah.
So if there is some planet out there that's in the Goldilocks zone
Yeah.
that's gone through what we're going through currently, but is 10,000 years ahead of us,
Right.
and finds the signature of nuclear bombs on this planet, and they realize, oh, okay, these crazy fuckers
Yeah.
have come into this new age where they could split the atom, and so we should probably take a visit.
Yeah. It was interesting hearing Tucker talk about that part
Mm-hmm.
on here. Like where that technology came from.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought about that before.
Well, that's
until I heard him say
Diana
it.
Pasulka's work.
Okay.
Diana Pasulka and Gary Nolan, who is legitimate professor, I believe at Stanford, and they Diana Pasulka was also a professor. She's a professor of religion, and they have investigated a lot of these crash sites. And the way they describe them, the people that are investigating the crash sites, the actual scientists, they call them donations.
What?
Yeah,
Donations?
That's how they don't even think they're crashing like as an accident. Right. They think some of them they're just sending down here. Like, hey, figure that out, stupid.
Oh, man.
Send them to some remote place.
Yeah.
Slam it down there, and then the government has to rope off the area. And you can still find parts in this one area of New Mexico where this one crash site was. They didn't tell them where it was.
Yeah.
They blindfolded them, took them out to this crash site, let them investigate it. And you can still find these pieces of some kind of metal that you can take and you can crumple it in your hand like tinfoil, and then it goes right back to the original shape.
Really?
It's the same thing that was described in Roswell, New Mexico. The Roswell thing is very hard because there's so many people involved and there's so many similar stories. But the problem is when a story's been told for so long, people repeat a story. Right. They're told in towns when there's no recording devices, there's no one has phones. This is a long time ago. They have regular phones, but no cell phones, obviously. And what they're doing with all this stuff is they're all talking about it, and then a narrative gets established, and then people tend to repeat narratives that are established.
Right.
It's hard because you're talking about something that happened in 1947, but
Right.
there's a lot of things that come almost right after Roswell. One of them is a transistor, and the other one is
microchips,
optical.
maybe.
What is that stuff
59.
called? Fiber optics.
Okay.
Fiber optics seem to emerge after that, and it's one of the things that's described in the crash.
Yeah.
The people that have described it. But the thing is, like, again, you're hearing these things decades later. Right. You're hearing it's very difficult to figure out what actually happened. But something seems to have happened because the Roswell Daily Record. I have a framed cover of the front page of the Roswell Daily Record from 1947, where it says that there's a crashed UFO, that the government flew to the base, and that it's like in the news.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem like something back then that you would just make up.
Yeah. I don't know, unless there's a reason behind it, distraction. I mean, who knows? It's
who
it's
knows?
wild.
It could be something that the United States was working on. But it seems like they were trying to cover it up so much so that they flew the wreckage in 2 separate planes to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And Truman met him there.
Things, yeah. 47's a big year. 63, obviously, a big year with the Kennedy assassination. 59 is a huge year. A lot of things happen in 59. There's a book.
Was it Truman or Eisenhower met him there? I forget, but and the other thing that Lazar said about the crafts that was baffling to him in the 1980s, he said there was no seams. He said there was no welds, there's no rivets, there's no seams. But now we know about 3D printing. Now they can 3D print anything. And if you conceivably have a machine that's large enough, you could 3D print a spacecraft. And it wouldn't have any seams.